So the Purpose Prize is an award given to an individual or a couple, I believe over the age of 50 or over the age of 60, who's doing really important social change work in their life. Now, Liz used the phrase leaving an indelible mark as a way to honor her son. And there's another way to do that. You could put up a memorial in Manhattan, like a statue or something like that. Or you could make a gift to a university and have some sort of chair in their son's honor. And that was actually Steve and Liz's first thought. They said, well, we want to help the people of New York, people like us. And when they looked around, they realized there was a lot of money to do that already. There was a lot of people working on that. And so then they said, well, we want to help people who have been affected by terrorism just anywhere in the country in any time. And they realized there's a lot of money in the United States to help people who have been victims of some sort of violence. And so then they went further afield and realized that what had actually happened was this terrorist attack had affected them and their mental health. And they realized there was very, very little money in the world to help the mental health of people who had been left behind after acts of violence. And so they created the clinics that Liz talked about. And this is from a Financial Times column that I wrote about them. And what's fascinating about the Peter C. Alderman Foundation is it's Liz and it's Steve and it's their daughter who's the executive director. And they have a far more detailed strategic plan than many much larger organizations. Because what they'll tell you is that it's not about helping people to try and honor Peter. It's about actually affecting them in some way. And so Steve said to me, if something's not working, we want to know immediately and we'll just drop it and go do something else. We don't have any commitment to the efforts that we're making. In addition to just finding out how many people they've treated, they actually look at kind of cost effectiveness and what's happening. And so you can see down here, my laser point is working. In Cambodia, they're able to get people over an 18-month time period from basically being incapacitated because of their mental health issues to being a productive working member of society for $50. That's what it costs them to deliver those services. When you listen to them, sometimes you could think, they're so analytical, they're so logical, right? Where is the kind of heartfelt emotion for their son? I believe, in my work with donors, that there's nothing more emotionally satisfying than making a donation or doing work that actually makes a difference, as opposed to something that feels good to do. So Steve explains that and says, using money for a good cause was the best revenge. That was the emotion in Steve, right? He wanted to take revenge. And what he realized was helping people in these ways was the very best way to do that. It was emotionally satisfying. And Liz said, I've realized you can't cry when you're working on the computer because you get the keys all wet. And so for her, and she talked about this at the end of the video, for her, this was a healing process for her to not fall in the depths of depression over the loss of her son. This activity is what made a difference. But this activity isn't just doing something that feels good. It's not just putting a name on a building. She's working 15-hour days on this since 9/11. One piece that I don't believe they mentioned in the video was that there were, I think it was 750 different nonprofits founded after 9/11 in response to 9/11, and there's 33 left. They're one of them. So they're two very kind of everyday people, right? Sherston was a college student. Steve and Liz said themselves, they're very ordinary people. Tom Siebel is not an ordinary person. Tom founded Siebel Systems, which was a big competitor to Oracle in Silicon Valley, which he ended up selling to Oracle for $6 billion. I don't know how much he owned of the company. It was probably a third to a half. I mean, he's worth a couple $1 billion. You could just be done with life, right? I'm done. I'm just going to go to Hawaii or wherever. And that's exactly what Tom did. He went to Montana, to his ranch, incredible place in Montana, and he lived there, and he thought it was fantastic. But Montana has a terrible methamphetamine problem. Meth isn't like other drugs. Nobody recreationally or casually uses methamphetamine. People who use meth once or twice or 3 times get hooked immediately and begin committing crimes to get more meth. It puts Coke to shame. I mean, this is really, really bad stuff. Half of all of the kids in foster care in Montana are there because their parents were on meth. Half of everybody in prison in Montana was there because they committed crimes on meth or were arrested for use of meth. So this isn't like other drug problems where it's a component of the criminal justice system. It is the criminal justice system. So Tom's used to thinking really big. And he deployed what has now become an example of what he'll call catalytic philanthropy. So whereas strategic philanthropy is having a good plan and following through, catalytic philanthropy is the idea of absolute, overwhelming involvement. Mark Kramer, who coined the phrase, told me when he was writing the article describing it, he kept thinking of the phrase shock and awe. When I read about it, I thought that the Powell doctrine, Colin Powell's doctrine, says you don't go to war unless you absolutely have to, and if you do, you bring overwhelming force. And that's the approach that Tom had. And what he decided to do, in looking, kind of studying the issue, he wasn't just saying, I want to have a token, I want to give back in some way. For him, this was his money. He didn't have any kind of obligation to give back. He just wanted to actually make a difference. And so in studying it, he realized that young people in Montana, they knew drugs were bad, but they didn't know what meth did to people. And so he decided to do, effectively an education campaign, which people have done, with many other things with varying levels of success. Montana's a pretty small media market. He basically bought all the ads. He showed 500,000 impressions of the ads that you're about to see. I'm going to show you one. There's about 50 of these. He didn't hire just kind of a video consultant. He hired people to do ads for Nike and everybody else. Now, this ad I'm going to show you is disturbing to watch. It's definitely the least disturbing to watch. Other ads in that series had 16-year-old girls prostituting their younger sister to buy meth. And what was different about these ads was the DARE campaign, the Just Say No to Drugs campaign, has been one of the most examined failures in philanthropy. There's been a ton of studies on DARE to say it doesn't work. Actually, kids who were exposed to the Just Say No campaign were more likely to use drugs than kids who had never been exposed to it. The reasoning behind it, and my understanding from what I've read about it, I'm certainly not an expert on how to keep kids off drugs, is that the DARE campaign lied to kids. It said if you use marijuana, you're going to go to jail and you're going to be a terrible person, you're going to fall out of school and you're never going to do anything. These ads are true. This is what happens to people who use meth once or twice or 3 times. And so associated with this, Tom putting together a huge program of intervention and different tools to get people off drugs and funded methadone clinics, and it worked. Montana was 3rd in the nation in terms of most meth use. It's now 39th. Teen meth use is down 63%, and adult meth use is down 72% since 2005. All of the surrounding states around Montana, meth use went up. So anytime you look at social impact, you wonder, well, maybe it just went down because of other factors, right? Maybe it went down because the economy got better, or whatever it might be. But all of the surrounding states' meth use went up. And in Montana, it declined dramatically. So his program was highly effective. But it wasn't by accident. This was the whole point. This was about, how do I actually affect things here, not just how do I, as a billionaire, give back in some way. So those are 3 stories of individuals who I think are making a difference in new ways. And there's a pattern to all of this. I think something that's unfolding in the way that we organize our society. Have you all heard of the long tail? Have you heard that phrase before? One of the editors of